Hey YouTube, so in this video I wanted to go over foreign banking options for US persons. Mainly, what does it entail? Is it even possible for a US person to just open a foreign bank account? And if so, what are the implications of that? What are the reporting obligations? Does it really help you protect your assets? And so we'll go through all those main points. So the first issue is always availability, right? So obviously there's a lot of countries out there. There's a lot of countries that have different banks that we won't find in the US. And so they're always opening new accounts because they want new business. Well, is the shop open to US persons? Ever since US FATCA was filed back in 2014, it's becoming increasingly more difficult for a US person to open a foreign account. And that's mainly because of the compliance, right? So US FATCA is basically this agreement where the federal government forced all these other countries to sign an intergovernmental agreement that said, look, if you have US customers that are your banking clients, right? So if I went to Bermuda and I opened a Bermuda bank account, the agreement that the government signed with the US says that that Bermuda bank has to file an annual US FATCA return with the IRS, with the federal government, that lists all of its US account holders. So its name, address, social security number, and how many accounts you have, what are the account balances. All that information is now being disclosed to the US government anyway. So that's the first issue, is if you think going abroad is somehow going to keep those assets, let's say private from the IRS or the US government, it just isn't going to happen. You'd have to go to a foreign country that has not signed on with US FATCA, and those are few and far between, right? And frankly, if you go to a country that hasn't signed on with US FATCA, the banking regulation and products there are probably not going to be very good, so you don't want to be there anyway. So that's the first issue, is just availability. In practice, I do see a lot of US companies and US persons open foreign accounts, but they have to bring a lot of money to the table. Right, you can't just show up with a couple of $1,000 and expect them to open an account, because it's a business, right? The cost of compliance for every new customer is quite high these days, and so unless you have a lot of money, they don't even want to do business with you. So that's the first issue. Tax implications, the second one. The notion that if you just have offshore assets and you're a US person, you can avoid tax on it, completely false. If you open a foreign bank account, let's say, and it's an interest-bearing account, you get interest paid in on a monthly basis, that's taxable income to you. Just because it's in a foreign account doesn't mean you don't have to report it and pay income taxes on it. The same thing applies with foreign brokerage accounts or foreign real estate rental properties. Anything that you're earning abroad is generally reportable in the US and you pay tax on it. That's the beauty of being a US taxpayer. You're taxed on your worldwide income from whatever source derived, okay? So that's the second big piece, is the tax implications. If you want to go abroad to save tax, it's not going to happen. And then, so the third one there, the reporting obligations. What do you got to do when you have these foreign accounts? Well, I think everybody is, for the most part, familiar with FBAR filings at this point. So FBAR, a foreign bank account report, is effectively kind of an annual informational return that's filed with FinCEN. So if you have foreign bank accounts and the account value exceeds a certain amount during the year, it's $10,000, you have to file an FBAR with FinCEN where you report your ownership interest in the account, and that includes if you beneficially own it or you just have signature authority. So if I opened a foreign bank account and my father was a signatory on it so he could access the funds on my behalf if needed, he would have to file an FBAR too. So we would both be filing for the same account. And that return is filed every year. It's due April 15th, but you get an automatic extension to October 15th. And failure to file it, the penalty is severe. It's $10,000 per return that you missed. And it can be upwards of half the value of the bank account. So if you've got $1 million in there, and you didn't do your FBAR reporting, you could look at half the account value being taken from you as a penalty, and that's if you're lucky, right? The really bad route that could occur is you go to jail, right? So the Department of Justice steps in, they take you to court, right? They charge you criminally and they put you in jail for not reporting your foreign assets. So be very, very careful with this when you decide to go offshore and open foreign accounts. And then there's additional reporting on your annual tax return, right? So on your Form 1040, Schedule B, where you list interest and dividend income, at the very bottom there in the Part 3, there's a section where you have to disclose whether you have ownership interest in a foreign bank account. You have to indicate yes or no, I do, and if so, what country are you going to file an FBAR? And then there's another little piece about, do you have a beneficial interest in a foreign trust, right? I'm not going to talk about that in this video, we're just doing foreign accounts, but foreign reporting is everywhere, right? And then lastly, on the 1040, you might have to do an 8938 disclosure as well. So Form 8938 is for specified foreign financial assets, which includes bank accounts, custodial accounts, other interests in closely held foreign corporate stock. These are all assets that you would have to disclose separately on the 8938, even if you already did an FBAR. So there's a lot of duplicative reporting here. If you have to file an FBAR, you might have to file the 8938. You got to do both. And because they're going to two different agencies, right? The FBAR goes to FinCEN. The 8938 goes along with your tax return. It goes to the IRS. They all want the same information. You got to do it. And so the very last one there, asset protection. So everybody's always concerned with asset protection. Do I open a company to hold my assets? Can I go offshore? Use foreign corporations to kind of safeguard stuff? What is the utility with a foreign bank account? Well, there is some, but not as much as you'd think. So the note I have there, it can work if you use a foreign bank that doesn't have a U.S. presence. So what do I mean by that? If you really want to safeguard your foreign cash accounts from the U.S. courts, you have to use a bank that doesn't have a branch in the U.S. or some sort of operations in the U.S. And the reason why that's important is because when foreign banks want to enter the U.S., they're subject to the U.S. federal banking laws. And one of the items that the federal government makes these foreign banks sign on to is, okay, if you want to do business in the U.S. and open a branch, you have to sign off on basically allowing the U.S. courts to access foreign bank accounts of U.S. persons that are overseas. So in other words, there's no separation from the foreign bank account you might have versus a U.S. one. So for example, if I went to Bermuda and I opened a bank account with HSBC Bermuda in Bermuda dollars, HSBC has a presence all over the world, including the U.S. So if a court wants to place a lien or levy my foreign bank accounts, they can, because HSBC has a U.S. presence. They have to honor that judgment even though the account is a foreign account. So it's a Bermuda dollar-based account. It was not set up in the U.S., but that does not matter. The U.S. courts can get at those assets. The only time that really can't work is if, again, the foreign bank has no U.S. presence. So there's a lot of banks in Belize, for example, where they only have a presence there or maybe in a few neighboring countries because they don't want, part of their pitch is that they have more secure banking that is less accessible by the U.S. courts. So again, so if you think going offshore and you open a bank account with a big global bank that has a U.S. office, you've done nothing to safeguard yourself, frankly. It might take a little longer for a court to get at your cash, but not much. So that covers all the main points. I'm not going to get into which banks I would recommend. I mean, some are certainly easier than others to open accounts with, but that's besides the point. The real issue is these main points here, right? Really think about, why do you need the foreign account, if at all? And if you do, what are you trying to achieve? What are your goals? And are you comfortable with having to deal with all these annual issues, right? All this reporting, knowing that the foreign bank is reporting this information under FATCA anyway, so all your anonymity is dead. So that covers it. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below in the video. Happy to answer any. And of course, if you can like the video, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. I definitely appreciate that as well. So thank you again. I hope to see you soon.